Hi guys, what is up? My name is Diego Lozano, and this is Fantasy Football Legends. Normally, I do this podcast in Spanish, but today I have a really special guest. Uh, how are you doing, man? Thanks for being here, and I love your fantasy account. It is one of the best. I love it, and thanks for being here. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and we'll work them through. Uh, so without further ado, let's go with. I know your guy is Trey Lance. I know you love Trey Lance, a QB from North Dakota State. Played in high school as QB and safety, and he's a really cool quarterback. Please tell me more about Trey Lance and which is the best fit for him in football.
Okay, so as you said, yeah, he was highly recruited as a safety, and then wasn't as highly recruited as a quarterback. Similar to Keenan Allen, if you remember, Keenan Allen was a five-star safety, but a three-star wide receiver. Ended up going to Cal and playing wide receiver. We all know how that turned out. But Trey Lance is, to me, he has the most upside out of the 3 to 6 quarterback range. Obviously, there's Trevor Lawrence, there's Justin Fields, and then Trey Lance. He reminds a lot of Josh Allen in a way. Kind of a smaller school. There's the lack of competition, the narrative beyond that. But to me, he does need the most development in this class. I think it takes him a good half a season, even a full season if he needs to, because the offense where he's coming from is very simple, if it makes sense. If you watch film on the game, he only makes 1 or 2 reads, and he does need the right coaching around him in order to get it to be able to process more reads. But once he's able to do that, I think for me, the best fit for him is either Carolina or the San Francisco 49ers. If he can wait a year for Garoppolo to kind of teach him everything, Kyle Shanahan to kind of get him in this offense, if he can be in Carolina in a mobile quarterback system, I'm all for that. And also San Francisco, if he can learn a year behind Jimmy Garoppolo, I think that makes perfect sense for him.
Yeah, man, I love it. I am a 49er fan, so I love that you say that because I love the guy. He's a great quarterback, and he has developed his explosiveness, speed, and he has a frame density in becoming a true weapon in the field, right? Because he knows how to throw, and he has like a real bazooka. We saw a 60-yard throw. I don't know if you remember. I know I don't remember against who, but we saw like big throws all over the season, all over 2019 season, and I love it, man.
Yeah, I think for me, I think it was the game versus Butler where he had
Oh yeah,
a 70-yard throw.
yeah,
He has immense arm talent. He does kind of have he doesn't really have accuracy issues, kind of like Josh Allen, because you look at the stats, you look at he only threw 1 interception his entire collegiate career, and you're looking at that like, oh, he doesn't really have inaccuracy issues. But sometimes he kind of makes the wrong reads at some points, or he looks at one read too much and doesn't see it open and tries to force it. He thinks his arm can do it, and that's something that NFL coaching can teach him on. So that's something I'm not too worried about. It's something it took Josh Allen 2 years to go from a 50% completion guy to now he's an MVP candidate and 65%. I think it's a lot like Josh Allen written on the walls. It will take a little bit of time. It's not a Jordan Love type developmental project, but it is a Josh Allen kind of developmental where it'll take him a year to kind of get going and be able to process 3 or 4 reads at once.
right. I love it. Um, so next question. I know you're a great expert of college, and go follow him right now at Fantasy Football Advocate. It is the best page on Instagram. I mean, and I love it, man. You know a lot of college, so tell me who is your biggest sleeper for the 2021 NFL Draft?
Okay, so I have a few guys. Obviously as a fantasy football guy, you do look at more like wide receiver, running back, quarterback. And to me, this quarterback class is very weak at the bottom. There's not anyone that I can really see. A name that I would like to throw out is Malik Cunningham. He's kind of a Lamar Jackson light out of Louisville. It's a very similar development scheme. However, I don't think he's Lamar Jackson's caliber. But under right system, he could be something. But to me, the biggest wide receiver sleeper in this class, he has the highest upside out of anyone not named Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, or Jamar Chase, and that is Tamorrion Terry out of Florida State. Now, there is a lot of concerns about him. He had an insane junior year or sophomore year, and then this year coming in, there was high expectations, and Mike Norvell kind of ruined that for him. I think his draft stock, before the season started, to me, he was a first-round pick. And now that everything's kind of shaped out, he didn't really perform this year, and then pretty much just left the team after 8 weeks. To me, I think he could go slip into the fourth, fifth, sixth round. And for a team that wants a high upside guy, he's going to fit that mold. And he has before the season started, we had a lot of comparisons to his vertical skills being Randy Moss-esque. I don't think it's that high. However, like in under a right circumstance, I think similar to a DK Metcalf, similar to, I don't know if you remember Dorial Green Beckham, a guy like that.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay.
He has a lot of upside. He does have some off the field concerns, so that's why he could even slip a lot in this draft. I don't think he goes second round, but off upside alone, he's a first round grade. However, there's off the field concerns that are going to shoot him down a little bit. If he gets into the right situation where he's just able to use his vertical skills, kind of like DK Metcalf in the second round was just able, he has immense vertical skills. To me, if Tamorrion Terry ends up in a situation like that, I am all for it, and he is by far my biggest sleeper in the 2021 draft.
Right, 100%, man. I have it is not like a big sleeper like yours, but like I love Rashad Bateman, and I think people are sleeping on him because he's like arguably one of the best route runners in college, and with either his shake or size, he can beat you. And also a guy I love is Roger McCreary, the cornerback of Auburn. I don't know if you like him also, but I think he's a great guy. Like I love watching him every time I can watch Auburn. And what do you think of Roger McCreary? Do you think he'll make the cut?
I haven't looked into, because I did have I have a post coming out in about a week and a half. That's my top 100 prospects, and I didn't really look into him a little bit. The guy that I was going to say for corner is the corner out of South Carolina. I don't remember his how to
Yeah,
say his last name.
foreign.
It's Israel Amukumuku or something like that.
Yeah.
But he does have, he obviously went up against the wide receiver 2 on each team. So that's something that could kind of fault him, but I'm a big fan of him. I haven't really watched a lot of Roger McCreary, but as you said with Rashad Bateman, he reminds me a lot of Devontae Adams and how they get separation. They're solid route runners at their size is what really, because obviously wide receivers you expect kind of like Justin Jefferson where they're kind of nimble and that's how they get their separation.
Yeah.
But these guys use physicality and route running. And also, Rashad Bateman has really good hands. I think the second best hands in this class outside of Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I love it. And also, what do you think about Elijah Moore, who separates well against man coverage? He has a great combo of speed and quickness, and allows him to have a great ability to accumulate yards after the catch. What do you think of Elijah Moore of out of Ole Miss?
Yeah, so Elijah Moore is a guy that he wasn't getting any credit until about a month ago. And I'm starting to enjoy the hype that's coming around him. To me, he's, I wouldn't say a light version, but he is a lot like Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore, they have a lot of yards after catch ability. They have the collegiate breakout age. They have what you want to see out of like a slot wide receiver. Because I think Elijah Moore projects to be a slot wide receiver, similar to Rondale Moore. But to me, Elijah Moore, he's starting to I was one of the first guys on him. I had him in my top 12 wide receivers, and I'm kind of updating it. I think he's going to be at wide receiver 11 for me in the next updated version that I'll have. But Elijah Moore to me is like the definition of what the slot wide receiver position is going to come to. It's guys who are it used to be guys who are like nimble and they're just there basically to be that pocket just to get open. But nowadays it's the slot wide receiver is a lot about yards after catchability, a lot about being able to separate. I mean, and that's something that Elijah Moore can do. And if this guy was 2 inches taller, this guy would be a high second round, first round grade. However, he's 5'10". Rondale Moore is 5'11". So it's like, what do you value at the slot position? I think if he ends up in a situation, he's almost like, he's not as fast as Brandon Cooks, but kind of a guy like that. He's a reliable target who is a little bit on the smaller side, but he's able to route run very well and is able to operate out of the slot and also on the outside, which is something he did at Ole Miss.
Yeah, I love it. And what do you think? Like, do you think it's possible that we have Elijah Moore, Brandon Cooks, Deshaun Watson? What do you think in Texans?
That's going to be interesting because the Texans are a mess right now. They don't have a first or second round pick. As a Dolphins fan, I'm ecstatic because that means they came to us. But it's interesting to see because I think Will Fuller's free agency status is going to be an interesting thing. I think if they're keeping Deshaun Watson, they're going to either have to sign Will or re-sign Will Fuller, or maybe even get a guy like Allen Robinson. I do like Elijah Moore there. I think as of right now, I've done a few like 2 or 3 round mocks, and a spot that I love for Elijah Moore is the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, we don't know their quarterback situation. That's something that we need to keep into effect. However, Elijah Moore is a guy who can operate in the slot. He can operate on the outside if he needs to be. And I think he's very similar to Brandon Cooks. So I do think he fits in the Texans scheme. I don't know if he'll be available at the 3rd round. That's the thing that I'm seeing. Elijah Moore is shooting up draft boards. So I think it's a possibility he could even go round 2. Similar to Kadarius Toney, their speed kind of can get them drafted a little bit higher than what we expect them to be. However, I'm a huge fan of Elijah Moore, and I think he has a 3rd round grade, and he's a top 12 wide receiver in this class. So any team that takes him is going to retain value for him.
Yeah, 100%, man. Next question is also about sleepers. Who is your biggest sleeper for 2021 in the NFL, for fantasy?
Okay, so I have thought about this a lot because it's something that obviously you look at 2021 and you're like, wow, it's 8 months away before the fantasy football season even comes around. But to me, Cortland Sutton is a guy that I've really kept my eye on throughout this process. I mean, there is the torn ACL effect. However, if you look at this team, Tim Patrick, he's a free agent this next offseason, and I assume he's not going to be with the Broncos anymore because he might demand too much money. However, Tim Patrick in fantasy football in PPR formats was wide receiver 28 when after Cortland Sutton went out. And so you correlate that to Cortland Sutton now, and Cortland Sutton, to me, especially with the ACL concern that a lot of people will have, to me, he's going to go in the 7th, 8th, and 9th round. If he's available in the 8th round as my 3rd wide receiver, I'm perfectly fine with that because at the end of the day, what you're getting a big body target that Drew Lock has gone to, and that in that first week, he had more targets than the rest of the team. And I'm pretty sure he was first in targets, and he had more than Fant and Judy combined. So if you're able to have that as a wide receiver 1 and you drafted him as your 3rd wide receiver off the board, to me, that's a perfect sleeper. Another name I will throw out there, although he's gaining a lot of hype as of recently, is T. Higgins.
Right. Yeah, man, I love it. I drafted Cortland Sutton last year, and I really hoped to him to be like my star, but it didn't happen. Like the injury came and everything, and I was really disappointed because I thought this was going to be his breakout year, but maybe, as you say, it's going to be next year, right?
Yeah, so Cortland Sutton I loved him coming into the year. I didn't have very many shares of him because of where he was drafted. Because I think he was drafted like around the mid 4th round, early 5th is around where he normally went. So to me, it was kind of a reach in a sense. But if he's available at the late 7th, mid 8th, to me, that's a perfect value. And there is going to be some ACL concern. However, with an ACL, you do need to look at when he got injured. He got injured week 2, so he'll be perfectly ready for the start of the next season.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And I have Chris Herndon. I love the guy. He's a great ident, and I think he'll have without Adam Gase, we've seen like a lot of players like without Adam Gase have success, but I think this is going to be the case with Chris Herndon, who maybe like a late round flyer with him. But man, I love Chris Herndon. Like this season, I rooted for him like every week, and in the last couple of weeks, he did a great job, and he even finished like a top 5 tight end in the last week, right?
Yeah, so Chris Herndon is an interesting case because 2018 he was second. He was first on the team in air yards, or I think it was 2017 if I'm not mistaken. 26, I think. No, it was 2018. So 2018 was his best year with Sam Darnold, and there was a lot of hype coming around him. And then the next year he gets suspended for 4 games,
Yeah.
and then basically is injured and is gone for the rest of the year. Then this year coming in, there's a lot of hype. Adam Gase is hyping him up. And then that just flat out didn't work. But we saw the last few games. He actually had a solid few weeks. And I think we've seen this with Devontae Parker, although I don't think Devontae Parker, I think he got a little overhyped coming into that last part. But Chris Herndon, to me, is a solid tight end. I think he's going to be still the starter. I think he could be a top 12 tight end. That's not where I'll have him ranked, obviously, because of some of the concerns that they have. A guy that I'm starting to buy in dynasty leagues, unfortunately, these last few weeks kind of like shot up his value. But Irv Smith is a guy with Kyle Rudolph. There's a lot of uncertainty on what he's going to do. If Kyle Rudolph leaves, we saw what Irv Smith could do, and he ended up winning me a championship, dropping 27 in a fantasy league that had like in a 12-team fantasy like expert league. But Irv Smith to me is a guy that I really like, and Chris Herndon, I do like the value that he'll return. He could be a sleeper. I do think there's a little uncertainty in the Jets team, so I will have to see what's going on, what offensive coordinator they hire, because I think they're going to go offensive coordinator with their head coaching job. And if they do, it's a matter of what the scheme is, because a guy like Brian Dable doesn't use his tight ends as much as a guy like Arthur Smith, who's in Tennessee with Jonnu Smith. So I think that's something to keep in mind. But I do like Chris Herndon, and I was a fan of him coming into the year, and unfortunately that didn't pan out.
Yeah, man, me too. It was really lame. It sucked. It really, really sucked. And also a sleeper that I had is Laviska Shenault with Trevor Lawrence maybe there. What do you think? What do you think is the value of Laviska Shenault with Trevor Lawrence there?
Okay, so I've seen Laviska. So I've done a few mock drafts, and Laviska Shenault is going I wouldn't say a little higher than my liking, but it's striking how a lot of people are on the same like Laviska Shenault hype train. And to me, he's a better value than DJ Chark, but DJ Chark's still going to be the wide receiver one, and that's no doubt about that. Laviska Shenault is one of those guys who, I don't know if you remember like Percy Harvin or
Yeah.
so he's one of those guys who he doesn't really he's a better wide receiver than like Curtis Samuel. So like Curtis Samuel is that same kind of role where he can be used as a running back, he can be used as a wildcat quarterback if he needs to be. Laviska Shenault is kind of all over the field, and what he's known for is his yards after catch ability. So there are games, in my opinion, that he's going to be a lot better. But to me, a quarterback doesn't really, I don't know how to explain it. A quarterback doesn't really know how to, it doesn't really use, like a new quarterback won't really rise up Laviska Shenault's value. I think it rises it up a little bit. I think where I've seen him go is around the 10th round. I love that value for Laviska Shenault, but there could be a time where it goes up into even the 8th round. And if DJ Chark's at the 7th round and Laviska Shenault's at the 8th, to me, DJ Chark is a better value, if that makes sense. But at the 10th round, I love Laviska. But we will see some of these second-year wide receivers start to creep up as the season comes up. So that's going to be interesting to see if he's going to be a value when draft day comes around.
Yeah, man, I feel you, and I'm really sure that like in late August, we'll see the reports that say Laviska Shenault is doing well with Trevor Lawrence and all these things that like raise the value before the draft. And I think that may happen. That as you say, he will be drafted in the 8th round, and DJ Chark will have more value than him, right?
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm saying. So DJ Chark kind of is the forgotten piece in this, because obviously DJ Chark, he had a lot of hype coming into the year, and then he kind of like fell off. Obviously the bad quarterback play. There's a lot of situations that went into it. So to me, it will depend on what report he has with Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, if he doesn't have a great report with him, and if they draft another wide receiver, maybe that value is not there. But like, let's say, for example, they have a solid wide receiver core in Chark, Shenault, Keelan Cole, just to name a few, and even Dede Westbrook, who's not used. But guys like that. So to me, the wide receiver core is good as is. So if they keep their wide receiver core and Trevor Lawrence builds a good rapport with DJ Chark, to me, he's a better value, because I think Laviska Shenault is all over the field. So it's kind of like a Curtis Samuel, where some weeks he's a wide receiver too, and other weeks he's not used as much, because it also depends on, as weird as this says, if they draft another running back, I think Laviska Shenault is useless as a running back, so therefore his volume kind of decreases a little bit. So to me, as of right now, Chenault's a good value. I think as the season comes on, he could get crept up into the 8th, 9th round, and that's where I could kind of back off. A guy that I will say is starting to fall down drafts, as I've done some mocks, is Odell Beckham. He's going into the 7th, 8th round. To me, I don't like the fit in Cleveland. However, in the 8th round, if Odell Beckham's still on the board, to me, you have to take that.
Yeah, yeah. Right there with you, man. OBJ, it's a freaking beast, and you have to take him if he's available right there. And next question, let's go. Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, or Devonta Smith. Who do you think will have the best future? And if one of them arrives to Miami, Detroit, or Philly, where would you draft them?
Okay, so I have done a little bit of mocks and I've kind of studied some of these players. To me, Jalen Waddle, is kind of like a it's tough to grade like speed wide receivers because they always get the Tyreek Hill comparison, and then you're like, oh, these people never live up to Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
But I think Jalen Waddle is more than a speed wide receiver. He's actually a solid route runner. And before he actually got hurt, he was outdoing Devontae Smith. Not a lot of people realize that this season. He actually had better numbers before, and then obviously Devontae Smith finished off with the Heisman campaign. But to me, Jalen Waddle has one of the most upsides in this class. I think he could be hampered by the team that drafts him because ultimately, I think there's a chance that Jalen Waddle ends up as a New York Giant, which is something I would not want.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not an offense to Daniel Jones, but if I would rather him be paired with a guy like Matthew Stafford or another quarterback who's kind of a gunslinger and can kind of get the ball to him 40, 50 yards down the field. And that's why Tyreek Hill is as good as he is. Not only is he good yards after catch, but like when there's a deep ball, he knows he's going to get it from Mahomes. So that's something to keep in mind. That's why Henry Ruggs kind of can disappoint because Derek Carr. And it's something like that. So Devontae Smith and Jamar Chase is going to be the biggest debate like for everyone in the NFL draft. To me, I have Chase rated higher, but it depends on what you value, like what the team values. So like Jamar Chase he's 6'1", 220. He has the best hands in this entire class. And he plays physical. He's not a great separator. So in terms of fit, Miami's a better fit for Devontae Smith versus like I think Jamar Chase is the better player. However, for Miami, it makes more sense for them to go Devontae Smith. So if Devontae Smith lands in Miami, I'm a huge fan. I think Jamar Chase ultimately ends up as a Philadelphia Eagle, if not as a Detroit Lion. If he ends up as a Lion, I love it because Kenny Galladay, Marvin Jones, free agents up in the air. We don't really know what's going to happen with them. To me, the most value is if a wide receiver ends up in Detroit, I'm a huge fan of them. And then also if Devontae Smith ends up in Miami, that's something I like. I think he could get overdrafted because of the overhype with the Heisman Trophy, with how the national championship went. Like there is a lot of factors, but I think to me, if you're really arguing about who's better between Chase and Smith, and you just like to me that argument is basically who you value, like what you value in a wide receiver. If you value like a Kenny Galladay type wide receiver, then Jamar Chase is your guy. Or if you value a guy like Justin Jefferson, like, and I'll give a little a comparison for all three of these guys. So to me, Jamar Chase is kind of like a Kenny Galladay. He's a little smaller than Kenny Galladay, but he's physical. He has really good hands and can go up and get a jump ball and can kind of save a quarterback he can be their go-to guy. Devontae Smith is kind of like a Marvin Harrison. That's a little bit of an older wide receiver, but he's a little nimble. His personality's quiet. He has the best route running in this class, in my opinion. So I think it just depends on what you value and depends on what these teams value. So if Miami's on the board and they go Smith, I think it's a chance that Chase ends up going to the Eagles, and then Waddle goes to the Giants at 11, or even goes 7 to the Detroit Lions. And that's going to be interesting because the wide receivers could go either 7 of them could go in the first round, or 4 of them go in the first round, and then you have like 10 of them go in the second round. So it all depends on how this wide receiver class kind of goes.
Yeah, I'm right there with you with everything you said, and also with Waddle. He also proved to be a tough guy in the 90. He went out limping in every play, but was there for his team, and I love that. I love like that aspect for a guy who is in your team. Like I think, yeah, I wouldn't like if he goes to New York. It wouldn't be cool. But yeah, as you said, I really think Devonta Smith could get overdrafted. Where do you advise to draft him if Devonta Parker, if we have Devonta Parker and Devonta Smith together?
Okay, so this has been something I've thought about because a lot of these wide receivers, if they get drafted, they do have weapons around them. So like the Eagles have Dallas Goedert that they're going to use a lot, Miles Sanders that they're going to use a lot. Jalen Reagor, the first round pick that they drafted last year, still has a lot of potential. I still believe in him. So and they also have other guys on that team. So to me, a lot of these, unless they end up in Detroit, they have weapons around them. So in fantasy drafts, I'm not sure that I would. Obviously, in a dynasty draft, you're going to take them third, fourth behind the running backs.
Sure.
However, in a normal redraft league, unless one of these guys, either Smith, like to me, the best situation out of those three, based on where I have them projected, to me, the best fit is Devontae Smith to Miami because Parker possesses the ability to get targets. However, with Devontae Smith, he's kind of all over the field. You can go to him, and Tua probably just has a better chemistry with him at Alabama. So that's something to keep in mind with that. So to me, a lot of these guys, unless they end up in Detroit, don't really have a Jefferson type impact right away. I think it's possible for Smith. However, Chase, with all those weapons, I don't think can get to 1,300 yards. I think they can get to like 900, 1,000. But to me, there's not really a wide receiver in this class that has a 1,300 wide receiver ability as Justin Jefferson did.
Yeah, I agree with you. Um, Next question, and here we go. What was your worst fantasy take of the season? Mine, I'm going to start. It was Aaron Rodgers. I didn't think that he was going to be that good, but like it's my bad. Aaron Rodgers is one of the best QB in history of sport, and and I have to expect that he has like a season like this. But with all the doubt we had with Jordan Love, with how happy he was going to be, like I wasn't really into him. What was your worst take in fantasy?
So speaking of Justin Jefferson, so I'm a huge analytics guy, right? So I look at a lot of analytics and kind of see how people are going to thrive from there. And there's a huge lesson to be learned if you only look at analytics, and that was the case with Justin Jefferson. To me, Justin Jefferson, you look at the college analytics. So the last year he was 96% in the slot. And then he gets drafted into the Vikings, which Adam Thielen's already a solid slot wide receiver. And you're like, oh, can he really do that on the outside? Of course, week 3 comes around and I'm like, oh shoot, do I rethink this? And then all of a sudden I have him as a waiver ad. But going into the year, I was really low on Justin Jefferson. And it wasn't anything on his talent. I thought the scheme fit was terrible. And that's just because of the analytics you have that. So the biggest thing is, even if they're drafted in a situation, you kind of have to project what they're going to do. And to me, Justin Jefferson was my biggest miss. Now I look back on it, I think, why in the world did I think that? However, Justin Jefferson is an absolute animal. And to think, it just goes to show how good this LSU team was in college. They have Chase, Jefferson, and now Terrence Marshall, who's going to be another top 32 pick.
So now that we're there, Alabama 2020 or LSU 2019, who you got?
Oh, that's interesting. to me, give me LSU 2019. And I know that some people will say Alabama, just how dominant they were. However, this Clemson team was better last year than it was this year, than the Ohio State team was this year. So with Trevor, with Travis Etienne, with T. Higgins, with all of these guys. So to me, the offenses are comparable, but what was different was the defense. To me, they're in LSU. They had 2 first-round corners. They had a linebacker who went in the first round with Patrick Queen. They had also an edge who went first round. I think I'm pretty sure I saw a stat where 8 of their guys went in the first 2 rounds last year. And then obviously you now have Chase, you have Marshall going in the first round. Like, they had a lot of guys who just consistent there. And the defense is where it really sticks out to me. Like, Alabama's team struggled against Florida. Florida put up 45 points on them, around 45 points. And most of the time you didn't really see that with LSU. So I think, to me, they're comparable on the offensive end. You might even give the edge to Alabama if you wanted to. But on the defensive side is where LSU really won that for me.
Okay. Yeah, man. I also have LSU, and because of that, because all of the first round draft picks, and I think they were really dominant. And I know they are like a little bit different, like as you said, but I really liked more to see like the LSU 2019. I think I'm there with you. We got next question, and it is a fantasy question. Which RBs would you rank above Jonathan Taylor for the fantasy football draft?
So that is interesting. So Jonathan Taylor, there is a little uncertainty with him, but you know what you're getting, and especially that last game is really going to rise him up the ranks. So people are going to either be really high on him, or they're going to say, "Oh, he's going to get overdrafted, and he might even go second round." To me, the guys that I would take over him, and we kind of went over this in a little bit of a question, is so basically you have the top four running backs in Cook, or CMC obviously one, Cook, and then you obviously have Barkley, why am I thinking? Kamara, Henry,
Right.
Devontae Adams, Nick Chubb, Travis Kelce. That's it. That
Right.
so to me, after that, there's a cutoff. To me, you could go Eckler over Taylor. I think that's a possibility that some people would do. To me, if Marlon Mack isn't there, I think that's the determining factor between those two.
Yeah.
I think Marlon Mack could end up in a scenario almost like Seattle with Carlos Hyde, something like that. So if Marlon Mack resigns, to me that diminishes Taylor. But to me, he's my number 9 player in the as of right now in the big board. The only guys that I would take ahead of him are obviously the tight end Travis Kelce, and then Devontae Adams, and then those running backs after, right after.
Yeah, me too. And I love like the way they're using them. They're using him because they have like I think it's a really similar of what the Titans do with Derrick Henry and McNichols. And they do like a similar thing with Hines and Jonathan Taylor. I think it's a similar thing, and I think that if like it is more like a game script scenario where you can have like Jonathan Taylor having a huge game of 200 yards, or if the Colts are losing, have only 50 yards, right? Like that is the main concern that you have with Jonathan Taylor, like the game script, and that's why you would rank like a lot of, like those players before Jonathan Taylor, right?
Yeah, so Jonathan Taylor, it's an interesting case because he's like in a negative game script, he's still out there on the field. Naheem Hines is a better pass catcher and is better like in the receiving game, but it's not like Henry, where Henry sometimes just gets taken out of the game when they're down by a lot of points. McNichols comes in, Darrington Evans comes in, these other guys come in. So the difference between the two, obviously Derrick Henry's a better runner between the tackles, and that's something we're not denying. However, Jonathan Taylor he's going to get majority of the run work, and especially he's learning to trust his blocks, which is something that he didn't do at the beginning of the season. I was at the forefront of looking at it, and I was like, his vision might be as bad as like you look at the film, and JT is just not doing. He's not trusting his blocks. He's just trying to go around, but he's starting to learn, and obviously those last few weeks look really good. So to me, Jonathan Taylor is a Derrick Henry kind of sense. However, he's still going to be using the passing game a little bit. And it's almost like, I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. It's almost like a Kenyon Drake in a sense, where it's not really, Jonathan Taylor's isn't a big bruising back. He does go to the outside a lot. He doesn't he fights for extra yards, but he tries to bump everything to the outside. So it's almost like a Kenyon Drake more so than a Derrick Henry. But he's a solid pass catcher, and we kind of saw it in the Texans game, the Jags game. I think he caught 2 passes for, I think, 60 yards and a touchdown. They'll disrespect him as a pass catcher, like some teams, because if Naheem Hines is on the field, then they're passing because obviously he's out there for a reason. But Jonathan Taylor is a solid pass catcher and can be involved in that game as well. I think Naheem Hines is the only guy that's going to take work from him. However, Jonathan Taylor is good enough to take some of the passing from him. But Derrick Henry usually never gets like 1 to 2 targets a game. I think that's something Jonathan Taylor can get each week.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And we saw like all season like he had only 2 drops, and in that wild card he had two really awful drops, and it was like really bad, and really it sucked a little bit because like I love Jonathan Taylor, and I was like a little bit disappointed of those drops, because all the season he performed as a good receiver, and and then in the wild card round, super wild card round, as they said, like he was different, right?
Yeah, he's uber talented. He's talent wise, out of the last few running back classes, to me, he's number 2. I know a lot of guys who would have him number 1. I have DeAndre Swift talent wise as a better running back. I know there's some people that'll disagree with that, but Jonathan Taylor has shown to be a good receiving back when he needs to be. He's not the best one by no means, and Naheem Hines is there. Naheem Hines is one of the best pass catching backs in the NFL. So it's not a knock on Taylor. Naheem Hines is just going to be involved there. but it's something where this offensive line is insanely good. Like that's something that we also need to keep in mind. With Quentin Nelson, with Braden Smith, with Mark Lewinsky, this is a top 5 offensive line. So if he's being able to trust his blocks as a top 5 offensive line and is able to get at least 2 targets a game, that's something that I'm a huge fan of, and that's why I would have him as my ninth overall player. Do I think in Dynasty I would have him as a top 5 running back?
Yeah, me too. He's like no doubt a top 5 running back in Dynasty, right? Because all of the future he can have, and we all of course we have to like to deal with the fact that Hines is there, and I'm not complaining about that because I love the way Hines is a really cool passing back, and I really love that. Also, next question. In this divisional round, here comes the revenge game for Kareem Hunt. Can we expect these things, or what do you think will Kareem Hunt do?
So it's an interesting thing because obviously it's a Kareem Hunt quote unquote revenge game, but Nick Chubb's still the running back one. So at the
Yeah,
end of the day, how much do they really use him? That's something that it'll be interesting to see. I've kind of seen the memes come out of this where it's like it's progressive versus State Farm because Patrick Mahomes versus Baker
yeah.
Mayfield, but which is kind of funny. But I mean, to me, I don't think the Chiefs have a doubt in this game. I think the Browns could make this game interesting. So I'm not like if there's people who are betting for the spread, like I think the spread's 10.5 or something
Yeah,
like that.
10, 10, 10.
Okay, so if the spread's at 10, to me it could be a trap. I think the Browns could keep it close. They've had a lot of their defensive pieces out for most of the season. They're for the most part back. They didn't even have their head coach last week,
Yeah.
so that's something to keep in mind. So to me, I think it'll be a closer game than people realize, but I think the Chiefs walk out of this game completely well. Kareem Hunt could have a solid game, and I think he'll be used more in the passing game. I like out wide. I think he'll be used more than normal because I think they're going to be down by a little bit fast. So like if they're down 14-0, we even saw this in the Baltimore Ravens game. Kareem Hunt was used so much because they kept on being down in the game, and it kept on going that way. So Kareem Hunt's just going to be used as a slot wide receiver at that point. So if a game goes like that, then Kareem Hunt's going to put up massive stats in the receiving game. However, I don't think it's a quote unquote revenge game with a win. I don't think that
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, me too. And yeah, as you say, I love like there are a lot of things that I love, but the thing that I love the most is to see Karim Hunt lined up at wide and receiving a ball. Like we saw it in that Monday Night Football against the Ravens. That like for me the best Monday Night Football of all the season. Like we saw that Kareem Hunt was lined up a lot, and I don't know why like this didn't happen a lot. It's no due respect to Donovan Peoples Jones, but I love to see Kareem Hunt like line up, and also Kansas City has given up like a lot of yards, receiving yards to running backs. I think it's like 800 or something like that, and I really think that the Browns will be losing, so they will use like Kareem Hunt a lot because of the game script, right?
Yeah, so the game script is going to be a huge thing because I mean, if we did not expect the Steelers to go down 28-0 in a game. So like if that happens or the Browns jump up 14-0, then this is a completely different ball game. However, if the game goes how we expect it to go, the Chiefs are going to be up a little bit as the game goes on, and that'll force Kareem Hunt to be used more and more, as we saw in the Baltimore Ravens versus Browns game where he was lined up out wide. And I think the more interesting thing here is Kareem Hunt is a good or a solid wide receiver. They've seen the potential in Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's not a top wide receiver by any means. He has a lot of athleticism, a lot of potential. Reminds me a lot of kind of MVS in a way. All athleticism. You're just hoping that he has hands.
Yeah.
Rashard Higgins. I think it's more of an interesting thing of this team has played so well without Odell Beckham. Do they trade him? Like that's kind of the thing that
Yeah.
I've kind of thought about as a Cleveland person who's kind of watched this game. They look better on the field without Odell versus when they do on with him on the field.
Yeah, and I think that like the main reason is that they're forcing like a lot the like all the team is forcing to give the ball to Odell Beckham, and when he isn't there, like all the game like is more like it's easier to play without Odell Beckham Jr. But like OBJ, I don't know why people like disrespect him like that much, but I think he's a great wide receiver. Of course, he's not like a top tier like tier one. but I think he's a really solid wide receiver, and I think like the Browns should keep him, right? What do you think?
Yeah, so it depends on how they view their team. Realistically, if I'm the Browns and I see like my metrics, because I'm pretty sure there was a post, I don't know what post it was, but their numbers with and without Odell Beckham on the field are striking. So if you can get like, if somebody's offering you a first round pick for Odell, take that, because like
Yeah.
that first round pick is going to help you a ton. However, I don't expect them to get a first round pick. So if it's like, if the most someone's offering them is a third round and a player, to me, I would keep Odell. And he's a top talent. However, the way that this offense works with Kevin Stefanski, they don't need like they don't need to force the ball down the field, and that was an issue with Odell. Now, can they do that with Odell next year? Can he buy into the system? You sure hope so, because if he can buy into the system, then yeah, he's a better version than Rashard Higgins, and you're just exponentially getting better. However, like the way that offense works, there's two wide receivers on the field, two tight ends, and obviously Harrison Bryant, Austin Hooper, or even David Njoku's on the field. How their offense works is everything feeds off the play action. So if Odell's not buying into that system, that could have been, or if they're force feeding Odell, trying to force feed the ball to Odell, that's why their efficiency numbers could be down. And to me, if you feel that like that efficiency mark is too much and you can go get an upgrade at a position like on the defense, to me, it's worth it. I don't know if they should keep him. It just depends on what the price is and how they feel the efficiency numbers are different.
Yeah, 100%. And last question. Thanks for being here at Fantasy Football Legends. What next with Deshaun Watson? What do you think will happen? Like realistically, what happens with Easterby? Can you tell a little bit to the people that are listening here? Like you are a big expert of this subject. What do you think will happen with Deshaun Watson?
Okay, so for people who are listening and kind of don't really know what's going on, so Jack Easterby is a motivational speaker that somehow gained control, or somehow has gotten on the owner's side and basically coincides with him, makes decisions. And for people who are unaware of the GM search, so they interviewed a bunch of GMs, and then they didn't even interview Nick Cassiero, the Patriots guy that they hired. Jack Easterby just straight up hired him. So that's why Deshaun Watson fell off. We're not sure what the tweet. I'm pretty sure there was a tweet happened. We don't really know what that was. We don't know if it was about that. But reality is, Jack Easterby is hated within the Texans locker room. Reportedly, he's the reason DeAndre Hopkins got traded because he didn't like him. Reportedly, he's just hated among the Texans players. So that could be a reason. So if I'm the Texans organization, I do whatever I can to fire this man, if possible.
Yeah.
You do whatever your franchise quarterback wants you to do. Like you're paying this guy $35 million. He's the face of your franchise. That's if you're a Texans executive, that's what you're hoping for. You're hoping you can do whatever you can to make sure you don't have to trade this guy, because the last thing you want to do is to trade Deshaun Watson, not get enough value, and this guy goes and wins a Super Bowl for another team. That's the last situation you want. So if he does get traded, the most likely scenario to me is either the Miami Dolphins, the Chicago Bears, or the 49ers. However, I think the most likely is the Dolphins, and just because they have a young quarterback that they can trade in the deal, obviously that would be the biggest trade that we've seen in a long time because it's quarterback swap. However, to me, they have a young quarterback that they can trade as well as plenty of draft capital. So in terms of value, the Dolphins have the most to offer. So if, like, let's say I think a mock trade could be Tua 18, which is their second first round pick, or even Tua 3 and a second.
Okay.
That's something I could see happen. But if you're the Texans, you should keep Deshaun Watson. However, if Easterby isn't fired and this executive group isn't how the Texans want it, or sorry, isn't how Deshaun Watson wants it, he's just going to keep on asking to leave, and his value is going to keep on going down. And at that point, you just have to trade him.
Yeah, totally agree with you, man. And that's gonna do it for this episode. Thank you very much for being here. Like it's a real honor for me for you to be here. Like I love your Instagram account. You're a great guy, and thanks for accepting the invitation. And I hope we can do it another time.
I appreciate it. I looked forward to this, and this was a pretty good one. So
Nice. Well, thanks for listening. Y Muchas gracias por escucharme. Nos vemos en el próximo episodio. Y can you say two words in Spanish? Can you say vamos delfines?
All right, so vamos al fines. Is that
Vamos
what?
delfines, okay.
Okay.
Though that's gonna do it. Thank you for everything.